Okay, I think we will get going. So hi everyone, and welcome to the last of our Look Forward and Scale webinars. I won't lie, I'm really quite sad that we're coming to the end of this series. For the last 3 weeks, we've covered the challenges of scaling acquisition, conversion, and fulfillment. And today we're talking all about post-purchase. As we discussed in last week's fulfillment session, the piece of the puzzle that customers really remember from their online shopping journey is often the unboxing experience. They remember whether their package arrived when they expected it to, how enjoyable it was to open, but then as quickly as they throw away the wrapping, they insert their new products into their daily lives and go about their business, all too often forgetting about the brand that they actually purchased from. As your store scales, you have more and more customers that you need to follow up with post-purchase if you're going to ensure that they don't just forget about you. This can seem daunting. Not only are you trying to maintain relationships with more and more shoppers, but once what they've purchased from you, those relationships need to be supported with more personalized messages and more personalized content. It can also be difficult to fathom what post-purchase really means. Are we talking about the emails that directly follow the completion of a transaction? Or are we talking about the longer-term ongoing communications between brand and customer? The fact is, how you scale your post-purchase processes will directly impact your customer retention rates and the likelihood that customers will return to buy from you again. And in turn, this impacts your ability to increase customer lifetime value. If as your store grows, you don't also tune up your ongoing customer conversations, you'll soon become a victim of the oh-so-famous leaky bucket, where you continue adding new customers to the top of your funnel as the same number falls out the bottom. Fortunately, I'm joined for the last of our Scale webinars by 3 post-purchase experts who are going to help us avoid these problems. So I'd like to say a really warm welcome to Moore, who is VP of Sales at Okendo, Jake, who is Senior Director of Strategy at Listrak, and Kerry Barnes, our very own LoyaltyLion Partnerships Manager. Can I ask each of you to introduce yourselves quickly? Perhaps, Jake, we can start with you.
Sure. So my name is Jake Pizzini. I work at Listrak. If you're unfamiliar with Listrak, we're an e-commerce digital marketing automation platform. Been around for about 20 years. We specialize in email marketing, mobile SMS messaging, and then the cross-channel orchestration between the two, as well as customer insights. Currently, we have about 1,000 mid-market and larger clients. I've been doing e-commerce analytics and e-commerce marketing for 15 years. If any of you are on stateside or are avid basketball fans and know of Villanova University, I also teach literal marketing analytics and customer analytics at Villanova in the undergrad and MBA programs. So I live this stuff all day, I teach it all night, and I'm just really excited to be able to talk to you guys about it.
Fantastic, thank you. And Moore, how about you?
Yeah, my name is Moore. I'm the VP of Sales at Okendo. For those of you who are not sure, Okendo is a customer marketing platform that helps direct-to-consumer brands that are on Shopify and Shopify Plus capture and showcase reviews. We do with a lot of different levers, integrations, native functionality, integrations with LoyaltyLion. So yeah.
Fantastic, thanks. And Kerry, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Kerry and I'm a partnerships manager at LoyaltyLion. Hopefully you should be aware of what we do at the end of our series. But for those of you who aren't already aware, we're a data-driven customer loyalty and engagement platform servicing over 6,000 retailers worldwide.
Great, well, welcome and thank you all 3 of us for taking time out of your days to join us. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I've got some great questions lined up, but we'll also be taking requests from the audience. So please do drop any questions that you have into the chat box at any time. If we don't have time to get to all of our questions, we'll do our best to get back to you after the session. So now I will just get rid of this presentation so you can see all of our speakers more clearly. 1 second, and then we can get started. Great, so let's dive right into post-purchase. First question, could you guys tell us about a recent post-purchase experience that you really loved and what made it special? Jake, perhaps we can start with you.
Sure. So we've had some crazy weather the last couple months over on the East Coast of the US. And we've lost power a few times, may even lose it during this session, hope not. If we do, I'll get back in as fast as possible. But I recently bought a gas propane combo generator for our house for when the power goes out. And immediately after, I got sent an email that had videos on how to assemble it and how to maintain it. And then it had product recommendations at the bottom with other stuff that I would need, like extension cords, power cords, etc. Right? And it was awesome because when the thing came, I already had the video. I used that video to help me figure out how to put the thing together. And then I was like, oh yeah, I probably do need some different industrial level cords and content and stuff. So it was, you know, it was perfect, relevant content with then applicable products. They're personalized to me based off of the purchase. And it worked. It was a win-win, right? It was great for me because I had everything I needed, and it was great for them because I came back and I bought more. So that was a great experience I had.
Fantastic. I think, yeah, YouTube videos, I use them so regularly these days. Thanks, Jake. More, how about you?
Yeah, a similar story to Jake. So I was buying something for my son. It was like a crib or one of those like, you know, bouncing toys. So I purchased that, and post-purchase, the email was how to assemble it and how to set it up. So that was interesting. There was a scenario where it wasn't necessarily post-purchase. It was actually pre-purchase. I was on Zappos once, Zappos.com, and I was looking for a particular shoe. So they had a live chat there, and I asked them if they were carrying, I think it was called the Nike Rocher maroon color, which was like a rare one. They weren't carrying it. So Zappos went to footlocker.com, they went to Nike, they went to a bunch of other websites and checked it for me. That alone built my trust for Zappos. Even though it's pre-purchase, that will drive me to purchase through Zappos in the future when I do need some sort of shoes or whatever it is. So two scenarios: post-purchase, when I bought something for my son, it was a video that was sent to me in an email saying how to assemble it, which was really helpful because typically what people do is they either have the instructions or they go to YouTube. That just saved me a step. And then the pre-purchase scenario was the Zappos one.
Fantastic, thank you. And Kerry, how about you?
Yes, so something I bought recently, one of these unnecessary spoil yourself lockdown presents. I bought myself a dress from a brand local to here called Never Fully Dressed. Thought I'd spoil myself, and obviously, you know, lockdown, we were all kind of isolated at that time. So what I really loved about the Never Fully Dressed post-purchase experience was the email that they sent. They were like, oh, hey honey, thank you for your purchase. They just made me feel like part of this community, which is obviously particularly important over the last few months. But yeah, just communicating all like the member benefits and that kind of thing.
Lovely, thank you. Those are great examples. So it's nice to see that some brands are actually doing post-purchase quite well already. And for the people that aren't doing it quite so well, what do you think is the biggest opportunity that's being missed at the moment by e-commerce businesses post-purchase? More, perhaps you could kick off.
Yeah, I would say it's probably offering incentives to leave reviews and having some sort of like automated campaign with it. It's interesting. What I always like ask the question: what costs more, acquisition costs or the cost of customer retention? And if you look at like just the study, I think there was the one done by InvestP, and acquiring a new customer actually costs like I think 5 times more than actually retaining a customer. So when it comes to post-purchase, if you're offering coupons to bring back, you know, the customers that just purchased and retain them, you're actually saving 5 times more than what you would have spent on acquiring that customer. So I think a lot of brands are not offering coupons because maybe they feel like it's cheapening the product. They're also, that goes hand in hand with creating some sort of automated follow-up campaign to ask them to leave a review. So, I mean, the answer to that is you don't need to offer some crazy extravagant discount. It could just be maybe for a new collection that you're launching. If you want to drive traffic there. It's interesting, I was on Uber Eats on Sunday ordering dinner. And if you're on Uber Eats and you're adding to the cart, one of the things that you have an option for is you'll see like a little notification that says, hey, spend, you know, $2 more and get 10% off. And there was nothing on the restaurant for $2. So I ended up spending $10 or $15 to get 10% off. Right. And I felt like I won because I got a promotion. Yeah. So that increased the AOV for that restaurant just by having that tactic alone. Mm-hmm. So did it cheapen the product? I don't think so. They just increased the AOV. And if the food is really good, which it was, they're going to win a loyal customer. So I guess to sum it up, it's offering some sort of incentives attached to automated review request email campaigns.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kerry, have you got anything to add there?
Well, biggest missed opportunities, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I would say one of the things that I'm seeing time and time again is that merchants just aren't using their customers as advocates. So, I mean, we all know how expensive acquisition is. More, you just touched nicely on that there. So what I want to ask merchants is, why aren't you using your existing customer pool as advocates? This is a huge asset to the scalability of your store. Customers that are acquired through referrals spend on average 200% more than an average customer. And if you get along well with these customers, they'll likely have other friends or family that have a similar mindset and make a similar good fit. So that's definitely something that people can be honing in on.
Absolutely. And I think, More, you touched on something really interesting about cheapening brands and things there. I think it's really interesting how often people think that offering sort of discounts or promotions and things is cheapening your brand, but there's such clever ways of doing it. It really doesn't have to be that way. And it looks like we've lost Jake. He did warn us that there's a hurricane happening outside his window. So he says he is here, he's powering back up. So he should be back with us shortly. But we'll press on with the questions in the meantime. So my next question is all about scale. So we've talked about missed opportunities, but if you could pick out one thing that e-commerce stores should be doing post-purchase in order to really grow and scale, what would that one thing be? Kerry, could you kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I would say as a store scales, they really need to be able to maintain a personal touch with their customers in order to stand out. So this is all to do with personalizing your messaging, enriching your communications with data. So, loyalty data tends to be good for this. So using all of this that you have about each customer. But yeah, other than that, you could be asking them for feedback, asking them for reviews. Reviews is obviously fantastic, as it's a really good way to be building trust, incentivizing social proof, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting. You've talked about advocacy and a little bit about reviews, and then you can actually start tying that into other things as well. So the people that have left a review, that they really like you. So they could then be people who will promote you on social media and other things as well, and sort of connect the dots a bit more. Do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, for scale, I mean, it's all going to come back down to sending that post-purchase review request email campaigns. I think there was like a study done by Campaign Monitor that said like marketers did like some case study, and they said that there was a 760% increase in revenue from doing like segmented campaigns. So if you're capturing first party data, essentially, let's just call it with Okendo, right? When a customer purchases a product, they get a review request email campaign that's sent to them afterwards, and they're filling out that review. Or you have your 5 stars, which is good and dandy, but the problem with 5 stars is it really only tells future shoppers if your existing customer is happy with the product or not. That's all it says. But if you're selling, I don't know, shoes, I spoke to somebody last week that their business, their brand is selling shoes. 90 to 95% of their returns have to do with sizing. So 5 stars cannot accomplish the reduction in returns because of that. So how do you do that? For example, I'm just going to put in a Okendo plug really quick. You can add attributes. So like data points around the products, the result of the product with the customer experience. So for example, what I recommended them to do was create a data point when a customer leaves a review, asking them, what's your typical shoe size and what's the one you purchased? That way, if you're a typical shoe size 9 and you purchased an 8, that means every future person with a 9 size foot will purchase an 8. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Now, when someone's leaving a review post-purchase and they're filling out that type of data, you can use that data to then scale, right? You can then build out that audience segmentation and run campaigns against it. It doesn't have to be campaigns against like asking for reviews. It could just be like, I don't know, ebooks, tutorials, whatever it is. Anything that you can even run Facebook ad campaigns to lookalike audiences, right? We do this really well with Klaviyo. Klaviyo is phenomenal at doing this. So I think if you want to go scale, then you need to use the data. And the only way to use the data is to capture it in the first place. So
I think it's such a great point, particularly because, there's nothing worse than you make an order online, you're excited about what's going to get delivered. It turns up and you try it on and it was, a dress that's actually made for a paper doll rather than someone your size. And it's always such a shame, but it's so helpful.
I'll give you a perfect example. My UGG slippers. So I was going a month going back and forth into like which slippers I should get. And heard like people talk about Uggs and they're like $80. I was like, okay, $80 for a pair of slippers. Like, okay, fine. So I ended up ordering a size 8 because I wasn't sure. They didn't have these data points. So I really wasn't sure. I got my size 8. I was like, crap, it's not the right size. So I returned it, ordered the size 9. I mean, technically speaking, what I could have done was order the 8 and the 9 at the same time. UGG would have seen an increase in AOV, but then they would have seen 50% return because of that, which is probably what happens. I mean, that's a perfect scenario. If they had those data points, they would have saved the return on exchange, which they have to cover the cost for, and they would have had a happy customer. So,
yeah, absolutely.
The words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm back, baby.
Welcome back.
Skynet took over.
Yeah, Skynet took over.
Well, perhaps now that you're back, you can lead us in our next question. So Jake, email is one of the most commonly used methods of post-purchase communication, but how many emails should be sent in a post-purchase campaign? Is one enough? Do you need 4 or 5? Can you give us any guidance on that?
Sure. So a great place to start is with 1, right? You definitely don't want to have 0, so you should have 1. But it's all about keeping it relevant and useful. If not all products are created equal. This is actually something you guys were talking about, the scaling, right? Like something that I like to teach a lot to my class is that optimization, everybody wants balance, right? So if you ask them, hey, you have 5 finals, you have 10 hours to study. How long are you going to study? They say 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, right? But one could be like Russian fairy tales, and another could be the finance class that you're going to be doing the rest of your life, right? You actually should study for the 10 hours and then do nothing else other than the finance for the 10 hours, right? So when you apply that to post-purchase, not all post-purchase campaigns are the same. Not all products are equal, right? There's certain products where there might be a lot of extra content you can show. Videos relevant to it, things about your brand with the product, other products that they can enjoy with it, right? Then it makes sense to have multiple because you actually have a story and a journey to send a customer on. But if they buy some random accessory that isn't a high lifetime value product or something, and they haven't browsed a lot of other things to generate data, then yeah, you maybe just want the 1 to try to get them back, and then it's other forms of advertising, right? So definitely the 1. But based on the product, the customer, etc., everybody's unique. You can definitely build out a multi-message series.
Brilliant. That's really interesting. And more, would you add to that at all?
I agree. 1 at minimum. I think there's a lot of DTC brands that are just sending 1 and they're not seeing as many order to review rates increase. That could be for a lot of reasons, right? You'd have to actually look at the data to discover what that is. But I mean, if you're approaching a post-purchase review request email campaign, like it's essentially a follow-up email. 1 follow-up is better than 0. More than 1 is better than 1. And I like what Jake said a lot about if you have an accessory that's not really bringing a ton of revenue, do you really want to send a review request email to that person? My take in the short answer is I think 2 as an average benchmark. 1 at minimum, 2 would suffice, I think.
Fantastic. And obviously those, as you say, more and more in a sequence, the open rates could start to, in some cases they increase, in some cases they might decrease. And I guess personalization and making sure that your post-purchase comms are really sort of unique to each individual is a great way to avoid that problem. So Kerry, let's start with you. What would your advice be for an e-commerce business who's trying to maintain personalization in their post-purchase comms as they scale?
Well, as a business scales, you have mountains of data points and high-tech tools all within your grasp, particularly with everything that's out there at the moment. So it's just going to give you back the time using those tools that you would have otherwise spent on other menial tasks. So make sure, you're taking advantage of all the tools that are out there. But when you get to this stage, it's very easy for somebody to just relax, lean on the automation, and let everything take care of itself. So maybe you want to set up email triggers, but not actually have too much thought behind what those actually mean, and that could just reverse the steps that you've already taken to connect with your customers. So with that in mind, just make sure that you are still taking time out to plan, making sure that you show your customers that you value them despite the fact that you're growing, despite that the fact that you're adding all this fancy tech and automation to your existing tech stack. So if you're able to do that right, you're going to be able to establish long-term connections with your customers who will just return more and more often.
That's a great point. I think many of us and many e-commerce store owners are obviously marketers, and you know, your heart sinks a little bit for people when you get these automated emails that have gone a little bit wrong. For example, you know, hi there might be the automated thing that goes in, but that sometimes you get an email saying dear there, and you think, oh dear, that's not quite right. So yeah, I think that's great advice. More, anything from you?
Do you mind repeating the question a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your advice for an e-commerce business that's trying to maintain a high level of personalization in their post-purchase comms as they scale?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you are capturing the data, I mean, it depends, right? If you're sending out an email that is requesting a review, there's so much personalization you can actually scale to, like, there's so much you can do. If you're using the data points that you've captured from the review, say age range, you know, if it's a shoe size, whatever it is, best uses, product standouts, then you can build out that audience segmentation. So we do this really well with, for example, Klaviyo. Klaviyo allows for building out that audience segmentation, running Facebook ad campaigns against this. But let's just talk about for email marketing for a second and campaigns. If you're capturing this first party data through, let's just say Okendo, and you're capturing all these data points, then for example, I don't know, let's just say you're selling, you're in apparel and you're selling, your niche is fitness apparel. And you have all the reviews and you're noticing that, you know, a good chunk of your reviews are 18 to 25-year-olds that are buying the shirt for CrossFit, for example, right? You have that data that syncs over into like a platform like Klaviyo. You can build out that audience, and you can then run maybe literally a workout tutorial for ages of 18 to 25 who are doing CrossFit. And now you've taken your reviews, your data from all those reviews, and you've personalized it.
Perfect. That sounds great. And Jake, what would you add to that?
Yeah, great points by Carrie and Moore as well there. You know, to add into that, you want to let your automation do all the lifting, right? So on your products that you're going to put in the email, you want to have a recommendation engine behind. A little bit of a plug here. I mean, that's why we built one within Listrak. So we do product recommendations for all of our clients. The typical view, bought, buy, top seller, that kind of thing. So it's always based on their browse activity and history. And then you can still do the same thing for your content. You can then dynamically, through any business or customer variable, you can decide that, hey, these people, I want to show this. So something that a client of ours did was they realized that plus size women don't like seeing petites, and petite size women don't like seeing plus size, right? So based on someone's browse cookie, everyone was segmented based on what they were buying into petite or plus size. And then they had imagery for each and different messages and wording. And then completely automated, whatever someone was, that's what they saw with those products. And to your point, Fiona, their engagement just went through the roof, and that resulted in more clicks and then more revenue.
That's a really interesting example. I guess you just have to be a little bit careful when summer comes around and everybody goes to the gym and sort of might change the sizes that they're buying. But no, I agree with you. It's the imagery you see makes a huge impact. Definitely. That's a great example. Fantastic. So more next questions back to you around reviews. So obviously one of the most popular additions to post-purchase emails is a request for a review, and encouraging customers to return and leave them is a hugely important part of that journey. But how can you then optimize those reviews that you have to increase sales and attract new customers outside of sort of what you've already talked about with getting more information?
Yeah. Are you saying like on the PDP, for example?
Yeah, or how can you use the reviews that you've garnered? How can you use them better across your other techniques and channels?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways, right? So I mentioned earlier that star ratings are not enough. It's not a big deal to have star ratings. You need more than that, something that's relevant. And then to add to that, UGC, which is really important. I can buy, if you're buying apparel online, and apparel is a very competitive industry to get into, but if you are successful in it, and because it's super competitive, you need to make sure that you're standing out compared to the competitor. So having UGC, I want to know, for example, I'm 5'7". I want to know what a t-shirt looks like, or whatever, a button down or a pair of jeans looks at on a 5'7" person that weighs 170 pounds, whatever it is, right? I can have that in the reviews. I can have that in those data points, what we call attributes. But what it's really going to hit home is when I see it in a photo. So having UGC is important. And then if you really want to drive repeat purchases and AOV, plugging in incentives. So for example, LoyaltyLion, we have an integration. You can have, and this work, you know what I find interesting? There are some brands that I speak to that somehow incorporate like a SaaS model in their DTC kind of like business model, right? Because they have this like subscription based, either it's a newsletter or they have like, again, a loyalty program that keeps customers coming back for more. And it is taking a kind of like a level of SaaS and injecting it into the DTC model, which I find interesting. So those would be the 2 or 3 areas that I'd be focused on.
Interesting. Kerry, I think that probably ties into quite nicely one of our clients, the Chive, who have a sort of gamification leaderboard for their loyalty program, so people can see if they leave a review, they see themselves jump up in the points leaderboard, which is really interesting. Kerry, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just back to what you said about UGC there, completely nail on the head. I know I definitely do it as a consumer. If it's a brand I'm not necessarily familiar with, I need to see photos of people wearing it. I want to see what it looks like. But yeah, if you're wanting to incentivize those, obviously loyalty points are a really good way to do this. So it's just, yeah, communicating with your customers, letting them know that maybe they can earn X number of points for leaving a normal review, or maybe they could earn even more by leaving that even more valuable UGC. So that's a good way to be boosting those.
Yeah, and if we have like 20 seconds, I had another idea that just I want to chime in. I typically get a question of, you know, so backtrack. I think beyond just having reviews on the site, I think there was like another study done. 63% of like customers will buy from sites that have product ratings and reviews. And I think they're more likely to trust that over the manufacturer description. But so you have that, but engaging with the customers on the PDP, on the review page, is very important. So replying to a review, having a Q&A section on that PDP. A common question is, should I allow negative reviews to get published on my PDP? Because if I just allow 5 stars or 4.5 stars, wouldn't that look a little sketchy? Wouldn't people be a little bit apprehensive and say, hold on, it's being controlled? So my answer to that is yes and no. Harvard Business Review did a study, and they said like 9 out of 10 customers are more likely to go with a brand, a company that shows transparency. And if you read like that review, they're talking about specifically replying to reviews, having negative reviews on the site, all that incorporated. So I guess my answer to that question of should I allow negative reviews is, if you can control the outcome, consider allowing the negative reviews to be published. If you can't control the outcome, don't do it. So for example, what's a situation where you can't control the outcome? Say I ordered a pair of shoes and it came in the wrong size or the wrong color. The merchant can control the outcome of that. They can respond back and apologize and tell them, hey, I'm so sorry. We're shipping you a brand new one right now. We just emailed you. They can do all that stuff. And when other shoppers see that interaction between merchant and consumer, that will drive conversions. A situation where you maybe shouldn't allow the negative review to be published is if it's outside of your control. So for example, many of the brands that I'm speaking to now are dealing with delays in shipment and manufacturing. So that's really outside of their control. You can send something out, but there's delay. Even Amazon is having delay with shipment, even with their Prime accounts. So that's outside of your control. So maybe don't publish. It has nothing to do with the actual product itself, more of the afterthought. So what you could do maybe is just at least, integrate, have like a customer success or team, like using Zendesk or Gorgeous. And if a review comes in with 3 stars, but they're complaining about shipping, have customer support reply to them privately, but don't publish that. Having the merchant interact with shoppers and customers on the reviews on the PDP will drive conversions for sure.
Yeah, I've read a lot of things that would really agree with that. I think the transparency point is hugely important. That's what customers are buying into now. Jake, anything to add before we move on?
I would just always come back to the optimization, right? If it's a high CLV product, if it's a product where you don't have a lot of reviews, incentivize and make sure it's sent. Just be selective in making sure you're requesting it on the ones that will be most impactful to your business.
Perfect. And talking about optimization, when it comes to optimizing your post-purchase emails, have you got any advice, Jake, on how the best ways to incorporate loyalty points into those post-purchase emails once customers have actually become members?
Yeah, so and even relating into the member thing, post-purchase is great. You should be putting loyalty points into every email. Every email they get, there should be dynamic content in there. Hey, you have 35 points. Hey, you're 20 points from the next tier. If it's someone you want to selectively incentivize, hey, get this and get double points, right? That type of segmentation and personalization is very important. So you definitely want it in your post-purchase, but then you also want all of those strategies in all of your other automation and mass emails too.
Absolutely. Carrie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the personalization element that you mentioned there, really, really important. Yeah, if you can show customers, you know, what tier they're in, how far away they are, that's really powerful. But there are also lots of other like ways you can be using loyalty emails as well. So whether that's just keeping them updated on their existing points balance, you know, it's short, it's not trying to plug a sale or anything like that. It's just a monthly statement. It could be a surprise and delight even. So maybe if you're approaching a birthday, you could just send them some loyalty points close to that. But yeah, lots of different ways you can be talking about points, talking about the loyalty program, the benefits to communicate with customers.
Fantastic. More, any last points?
For optimizing post-purchase email?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I think everything that was mentioned was exactly on point. I think I want to add just a little bit about what to look for. As far as optimizing go, it's like, what should I optimize? What should I look for when I optimize? So I think deliverability rate is very important. Click-through rate is very important. And then order to review rate is extremely important. Reviews itself increases conversions, no doubt about it. There are plenty of studies that talk about it. I don't even have to like speak of Okendo. Just Google it. So if the order to review rate is low, and you know the open rate and the click-through rate is high, I mean there's like, you know, some sort of like issue there, like what's happening. So looking at those three: open rate, CTR, deliverability rate, and then order to review rate. Those 4 areas are really, really important to optimize.
Brilliant. That's really easy to action as well. Fantastic. Thank you. And more, next question is also for you. Thinking outside thinking outside of just emails,
yeah,
what other ways can you kind of engage with an online community to drive more reviews? Can you ask for them on social media? What other tools
for
do
sure.
you have?
Yeah. So outside of sending out the post-purchase emails, outside of what I already mentioned of having the Q&A on your site, which I don't think I talked about in detail, so I'll just quickly talk about that. And then outside of replying to reviews, you can request reviews on Instagram. So we have a pretty phenomenal integration with a company called 460. Their like pitch, or what they do is they make your UGC on Instagram shoppable. So let me paint a scenario. If you have a brand and that brand has an Instagram channel, which most do, and that Instagram channel is getting a good amount of traffic, wouldn't you want to monetize that traffic? You're doing it for your sites, you're doing it for everything else. Why not do it for Instagram? Now, if you're going to monetize that traffic, how do you do it? Well, you make the UGC on that Instagram shoppable. So if you're posting a picture of someone wearing a t-shirt or a pair of shoes that you're selling, you can use 460 to make that product in that UGC shoppable. So if you're going to make it shoppable and you're going to treat it as a storefront, how much more so do reviews really matter, right? The star ratings and the number of reviews. So 460 does a really good job of actually capturing the UGC that either you, the native brand, has posted, or anyone else that's tagged your brand. So if anyone else tagged your brand on 460, you can request the rights to use that photo for your site. When you plug in Okendo into that, you can also now display the star ratings and the number of reviews to that photo that was tagged. So that's another way. That's huge. I mean, a lot of people they have their DTC brand Instagram page, which is like a verified, and like, why not monetize that? It makes no sense if you don't. That's one way. The second part is the Q&A, which I mentioned. Most brands that I'm looking at, they have an FAQ page on their site. The problem is when you're having traffic get into your site, and someone has, I don't know, if you're selling a little bit more of a complicated product or requires a little bit more education, maybe food and beverage or vitamins or whatever it is, chances are your shopper is now going to go to the FAQ page. So they left the PDP, now they're spending time on the FAQ. You want to keep your shopper on the PDP as long as possible because that's the closest area to the checkout. So how can you incorporate FAQ within the PDP? You can add a Q&A section. So the Q&A section, for example, allows shoppers to ask questions. The problem is if they're just launching a Q&A, they don't have any questions from shoppers, what they could do, at least to start building the momentum, is they themselves, the merchant, can go in and ask a question that a typical shopper would ask. And the merchant, can go in and answer that question. So when now a shopper goes to their PDP, they'll see reviews, they'll see a questions tab, and they'll see like a little numerical value of how many questions are. They'll click on it and they're like, oh yeah, wow, that question actually is a question I had in mind. You've prevented them from leaving the PDP, and they're closer now to clicking the checkout. So you want to shorten the sales cycle. So sum it up, 460, and then Q&A.
Fantastic. Again, I think adding that Q&A to a PDP is nice, sort of something someone can tick that off quite quickly. It's a great action. Great. So Jake, let's start with you for the next question. How can a scaling e-commerce business use elements of post-purchase experiences to tell their brand stories and communicate their brand values? So we know that's something that customers are really looking for. Conscious consumerism is way more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, so I may go a little different direction than everybody else on the panel. I don't think post-purchase is the right place to be telling your brand story. And so someone like, I got, power off, so I didn't get to tell you a little bit of a story that recency rules the world. It's the most important thing with post-purchase. Someone is most likely to do something immediately after they've done it. If you've bought, you're way more likely to buy again right away. Like I always tell the story on Mother's Day. It's Friday before Sunday. I'm a terrible son. I haven't gotten a gift. I go, oh no. I go to Amazon. I look at the 1-day Prime. I find something. I drop the phone like a mic and I say, oh, Dana, my wife, I got this great gift for my mom. She goes, well, what is it? And I show her. And then she says, oh, that's great. Get one for my mom. So then boom, I'm right back in and I buy again. And you say, oh my God, but that actually happens way more often than you and I both buying 95 days from now, right? So if someone has bought, they are most likely to buy again right away. And they are more likely to buy than someone who has never bought, right? The frequency continues to put thresholds of likelihood to buy. So your post-purchase should be about selling more. Strike while the anvil's hot. If I bought a TV, I might also buy a couch, the sound system, the lighting, right? Like you're redoing a room. Everybody wants to do all that stuff at once. You don't want to wait and do it over 6 years, right? So tell your story in mass marketing. Tell your story in social and Instagram. If you have something in your brand where it was like 10% of the revenue is going to go to helping doctors or something, great. Then in your post-purchase thing, connect it and tell them how much to date has been donated or whatever, right? And that's a brand story. But other than that, use purchase to drive sales and traffic to the site and use everything else to tell your story. They've already bought from you. Like they should know your brand at that point.
It's a very good point. Kerry, when we're thinking about people who are at risk or who have actually churned, customers who haven't purchased recently, I guess this is perhaps where the brand story becomes even more important.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on how you could maybe be winning customers back with your brand story?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to jump in and talk about. So yeah, I would say that communicating your brand is particularly relevant to that segment of customers. So customers that haven't returned within an expected given time frame, maybe they're just not thinking about you, maybe they've lapsed. Saying that these customers are still significantly cheaper to convert than somebody that's never shopped with your store before. Could you just be that they've forgotten about your brand? So this is the moment where you want to be communicating your brand values. So you could be coming in and talking about, well, if you're a vegan cosmetic brand, for instance, this is the time where you can come in and start talking about your recycling program that you've run. So we've got a couple of merchants that do that really nicely. They offer points for recycling. Or another example that springs to mind quite often, I actually sign up to their emails myself. This is Astrid and Miyu. They have a really lovely brand community, and it's just good to keep in touch. These aren't purchases that you're buying once every couple of months. These are, high-end pieces of jewelry that it takes a bit longer. But as long as they're keeping in contact with you, talking about their your shared interests with your customer, this is the segment you want to be targeting with your brand messaging.
Brilliant, thank you. Maud, do you have anything else to add on top tips for people who are trying to win back customers who might have churned?
I don't. I can tell you how to increase new customers. I don't have. I think what I really liked what Jake said though. Don't distract the shopper or your customer from doing anything else but leaving a review or purchasing additional products. It's so important. Like a lot of people ask me, like, should I on my email have additional products and all these things? I'm like, just focus on like niche it out. Like if that's focus on one objective and then do that. I think Jake nailed it. That was awesome.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Cool.
man.
So we've got a couple of additional questions. So first up, question from Kelly. Can you speak more specifically to the how-tos of post-purchase harnessing customers as advocates? So Kerry, let's go to you for that one. Is there anything else you can be doing to get customers to act as advocates after a purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd just say you want to be automating that message post-purchase that really just lets customers know what the benefits are of leaving a review in the first place. That could be loyalty points, or maybe you want to just translate that really simply and say it's $10 off your next order. So that's kind of one element of advocacy. The referral side of thing is another thing that you should really be tapping into. So again, if you can identify who your top reviewers are, so maybe the 4 or 5 star reviewers, again, automate the process that says, thanks for leaving your review, here are some points, did you know you could earn more by referring your friends? So these are all good ways to automate that communication and automate that incentivization to get people acting as your advocates.
Fantastic. And more, a question around reviews. Will reviews be genuine if you're offering loyalty points, or will they just be for the sake of the loyalty points?
Yeah, good question. Will they? I don't know. It all depends on the actual review itself. It's not like the reviews will just automatically go on the site, and it's not like you have to offer reviewer points for every post purchase. You can create offer points or an incentive based on only uploading UGC versus just a review, right? You don't have to stick to reviews. If reviews isn't the issue, but UGC is the issue, then I wouldn't recommend creating a coupon or incentive or loyalty points to just submit a review. You don't need it. What you need is UGC. So it's case by case, and the way to do that is moderation of the reviews. So if you feel the review seems fake and not genuine, don't publish it. Yeah, you may give away the points, but I mean, you got to look at the big picture. Is giving away the points really affecting revenue, or is it overall increasing revenue? If it's all overall increasing revenue, so it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 2 rotten bad apples. That would be one. And then I tend to hear some people complain that, like, from their previous softwares, that they'll get a review for a post-purchase product, but the review is very generic. It's not specific to the product. That happens a lot. Again, that's why the moderation comes in handy. You should have a team moderating reviews, at least in the beginning, right? Because if you're seeing that there's a trend where majority of your reviews, 95% of them are legitimate, then maybe consider auto-publishing it. What you can even do, take it a step further, and I'm going to plug in Okendo for a minute, is the concern about auto-publishing reviews is, what if I have a false positive? What if I get somebody leaving a 5-star review and the review itself is negative? Like the actual written text is negative, or it's just not relevant. So what you can do is you can add like this filtering that says, allow 5-star reviews to get auto-published or 4-star reviews to get auto-published. But if that written review has any sort of profanity, negative sentiment, or any keywords that I want to manually plug in, red flag it and do not auto-publish it. So you may not be able to control the quality of reviews, but you would be able to control the reviews itself. So that would be my 2 cents.
That makes a lot of sense. Brilliant. Thank you. And Jake, you're the lucky winner of our last question of the day. So we've talked a lot about using emails to drive the post-purchase activity. Do you have any advice for people on making sure that emails find their way into a customer's inbox rather than their spam folder?
Sure. So the most important thing is to be your mass marketing sends, to be segmenting those to people who are interacting with your brand, right? Your automations are pretty much going to make it there unless you've done something crazy on the mass marketing side that completely and utterly tanks your deliverability, right? So your behaviorally triggered stuff like your welcome series and your browse abandonment, and your cart abandonment, and your post-purchase, those are all high engaging emails. Your review requests, like all of that stuff is highly engaged emails. It's your mass marketing ones where you have 1 million contacts and you just send them every single day, and it has nothing to do with what they've been browsing. That's what, the Google will see as, Gmail will see as, bad spammy emails, and then it hurts all of your deliverability, right? So I always try to do it off of a brand focus. Like a lot of email service providers will say, oh, look at how recently someone has opened an email. That's, very centric. It's very biased towards email, right? Instead, look at the last time they have browsed your site. Like maybe they've been browsing your site 3 times in the last 7 days. They haven't opened an email yet, but they're probably going to be pretty likely to since they've been browsing your site, right? So if you're sending it to people who are actively opening, actively browsing, or actively purchasing, then those people are going to engage with your emails and you're not going to tank your deliverability. So just in your mass marketing, make sure that it's to people who are actively engaging with your brand and you'll never have a problem.
Fantastic. That's great advice. Thank you. Okay, so I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. If you haven't checked out the post-purchase ebook from this Look Forward campaign yet, then you can do so now and revisit the tactics we've discussed today. You can also rewind and get the acquisition, conversion, and fulfillment ebooks and each of the webinars online too. So all that remains for me is to say a big thank you to our speakers. We really appreciate you taking time out to share your thoughts. Maura and Jake, could you let our listeners know where they can find you online? Jake, you first, perhaps.
Yeah, Jake, go first.
Sure. So if you looked on LinkedIn, you can find me, Jake Pizzini. I'm pretty open. It'll show both under teaching at Villanova and for being the senior director here at Listrak. So just reach out to me there. My email is also jake.pizzini, jake.pasini @listrak.com. So either reach out to me, LinkedIn, or straight at Listrak, and we will gladly help you out.
Fantastic, thank you. And more?
Yeah, I'm heavy on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I wouldn't spell out my name because no one's gonna remember, so maybe you could send everyone an email afterwards. But it's More Asulin, so LinkedIn /More Asulin. And then if you're interested in Okendo, then you can also email me. So it's more.asulin@okendo.io. But yeah.
Fantastic. And then you can find Carrie and myself on LinkedIn, or you can learn more about loyalty and scale over on LoyaltyLion.com. It really has been a pleasure to host these webinars for the past 4 weeks. I hope that we provided some actionable insight into scaling your store. Thank you so much to everybody that's tuned in along the way. But for now, though, that's it. And thank you again for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.